The thunderous crack of a gunshot echoed through the pine-scented air as Lily Remington burst from the mining camp's makeshift prison, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild mustang. Blood trickled down her temple where the guard's bullet had grazed her, but the pain was nothing compared to the fire of determination in her veins. 2 months in Silver Summit Mining Company's debt labor camp had taught her one thing: death was preferable to another day in that hell. Colorado Territory, 1874. Lily's lungs burned as she scrambled up the rocky terrain, the hem of her tattered dress catching on scrub brush and sharp stones. Behind her, angry shouts rose from the camp as lanterns flickered to life in the pre-dawn darkness. She knew she had perhaps 15 minutes before the company guards would mount their horses and begin the hunt. 15 minutes to disappear into the vast wilderness of the San Juan Mountains. The silver mining camp sprawled below her like a festering wound on the mountainside, just 5 miles from Silverton. What had started as a promise of work after her father's death had quickly revealed itself as indentured servitude, cooking and laundering for miners, while accumulating more debt than she could ever repay. Lily paused to catch her breath behind a large boulder, her slender fingers pressing against a stitch in her side. At 22, she had never imagined she would become a fugitive. Her mother had raised her to be a proper lady back in Pennsylvania, before consumption had claimed both parents and left Lily with nothing but her father's pocket watch and a desperate need to survive. The watch was gone now, taken by the camp boss, along with her dignity and nearly her virtue. Last night's escape attempt had come after the supervisor, Everett Burke, had cornered her in the supply shed with liquor on his breath and violence in his eyes. The heavy iron skillet she'd brought down on his head had bought her freedom, but she had no illusions about what would happen if they caught her. Murder was a hanging offense, even if it was self-defense. As the first golden rays of sunlight spilled over the eastern ridge, Lily pushed deeper into the forest, following a deer trail that wound through towering ponderosa pines. She needed water, food, and shelter in that order. The mountains in late spring were still unpredictable. Warm days could give way to freezing nights without warning. 20 miles to the west, Isaac Vance sat at a campfire outside his small cabin, sipping coffee as the morning light painted the peaks in shades of amber and rose. At 30, Isaac had seen enough of humanity to prefer the company of his horses and the wilderness. The war between the states had taken his youth, and the years since had hardened him into the kind of man people in town called reliable but remote. His homestead sat in a sheltered valley, with good grazing for his small herd and enough privacy to keep the memories at bay. Isaac made his living breaking horses for ranchers around Silverton, and occasionally guiding hunting parties through the mountains he knew like the lines on his palm. The coffee was just starting to cool when his dog, Cooper, lifted his head and growled softly. Isaac set down his tin cup and reached for the Winchester rifle that was never far from hand. In these mountains, a visitor could be anything from a lost traveler to a hungry mountain lion. "What is it, boy?" he murmured, his blue eyes scanning the tree line. Cooper's ears perked forward, focused on the northern approach. Isaac rose silently, his movements fluid and economical. 8 years as a cavalry scout had taught him to move without being seen, a skill that had saved his life more than once. The sound came again, not an animal, but the unmistakable snap of a branch under a human foot. Isaac melted into the shadow of a large spruce, his rifle ready but not aimed. He wasn't a man who shot first and asked questions later, but neither was he one to take chances. Lily stumbled down the slope, exhaustion making her clumsy. She had been moving for hours, driven by fear and desperation. Her throat felt like sandpaper, her stomach a hollow pit. The small stream she'd found earlier had quenched her immediate thirst, but she needed more than water to survive in these mountains. When she spotted the cabin nestled in the valley below, her first instinct was to retreat. Human habitation meant potential danger. But the thin trail of smoke rising from the chimney also meant warmth, possibly food, and maybe if God was finally showing her mercy, someone who wouldn't immediately turn her in for the reward the mining company would surely offer. The decision was made for her when her foot slipped on loose shale. She tumbled forward with a startled cry, rolling painfully down the embankment before coming to rest against a fallen log, the world spinning around her. Isaac moved with the silent efficiency that had once earned him the nickname Ghost among his fellow scouts. The figure that had fallen was too small to be one of the trappers or prospectors who occasionally passed through. As he drew closer, the realization that it was a woman alone and clearly in distress made him lower his rifle slightly. "Madam," he called, keeping a cautious distance. "Are you hurt?" Lily's head jerked up at the deep male voice, her hazel eyes wide with fear. She scrambled backward, ignoring the pain shooting through her ankle. "Stay back," she warned, her voice hoarse but defiant as she brandished a sharp rock she'd grabbed from the ground. Isaac raised one hand in a placating gesture, his rifle pointed at the ground. "I mean you no harm, madam. You're injured and a long way from anywhere. Let me help you." "The last man who offered to help me tried to force himself on me," Lily spat, her gaze darting around for an escape route. "I'll take my chances with the mountains." Understanding dawned in Isaac's eyes, along with a flash of anger not directed at her. He'd seen enough of humanity's darker nature to recognize genuine fear when he saw it. He stepped back, creating more distance between them. "My name is Isaac Vance." "That's my cabin down there." He nodded toward the small structure. "I've got food, medical supplies, and you're welcome to them. I'll stay right here while you decide." Lily studied him through narrowed eyes. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a lean hardness that spoke of a life of physical work. His face was tanned and weathered beneath a short beard, with lines at the corners of eyes that were a startling shade of blue against his sun-darkened skin. He didn't look like a mining company man, with his buckskin jacket and worn cavalry boots. Her ankle throbbed painfully, and reality was setting in. Without help, she wouldn't make it far, certainly not far enough to escape the guards who would be scouring these mountains for her. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked, still clutching her makeshift weapon. Isaac's mouth curved slightly beneath his beard. "You don't. Just like I don't know if I can trust you, showing up on my property looking like you've tangled with a mountain lion." He gestured to her torn dress and the dried blood on her temple. "But my mother raised me not to leave injured folks to die in the wilderness, so here we are." Something in his straightforward manner eased her panic slightly. He could have overpowered her easily if that had been his intention, yet he kept his distance, giving her space to choose. "I need to keep moving," she said, wincing as she tried to put weight on her injured ankle. "Not on that ankle, you're not," Isaac observed, "and not without supplies." "The nearest town is Silverton, about 15 miles over rough country. Whatever you're running from, it'll catch up to you if you try to cross these mountains unprepared." Lily felt tears of frustration building but refused to let them fall. "They'll come looking. I can't stay in one place." "Who's they?" Isaac asked, his expression sharpening with interest. "Silver Summit Mining Company guards," she admitted after a moment of hesitation. I was held at their camp against my will. I escaped last night." Isaac's jaw tightened. He'd heard rumors about the conditions at the Silver Summit camp, how they lured people in with promises of good wages, then kept them in perpetual debt through company housing. company food, and rigged accounts. Some called it debt peonage. Others called it slavery by another name. "Those bastards don't usually come this far into my valley," he said finally. "And if they did, they'd find more than they bargained for. I don't take kindly to trespassers." Lily searched his face for deception, and found only a quiet, steady resolve that stirred something inside her, the first fragile tendril of hope she'd felt in months. "What do you want in return?" she asked warily. Nothing in life was free. That lesson had been beaten into her repeatedly. "Nothing," Isaac replied simply. "Just don't steal from me or try to kill me in my sleep, and we'll get along fine until you're well enough to move on." The absurdity of his request, as if she posed any threat to this mountain of a man, almost made her laugh despite her circumstances. Almost. "My name is Lily," she offered finally, lowering the rock. "Lily Remington." "Well, Miss Remington, can you walk if I give you a hand, or should I carry you down to the cabin?" Pride made her want to walk, but practicality won out. "I think I'll need help," she admitted grudgingly. Isaac approached slowly, as one might a skittish horse, and offered his arm for support. When she took it, he felt how badly she was trembling despite her brave face. Whatever had happened at that mining camp, it had left more than physical wounds. "Lean on me," he instructed, his voice gentler than before. "I've got medical supplies at the cabin, and Cooper's been keeping a stew warm all morning." "Cooper?" Lily asked, distracted momentarily from her pain as she hobbled alongside him. "My dog," Isaac explained with a hint of amusement. "Best conversation partner in 3 counties. Doesn't talk much, but never disagrees with me either." That did draw a small smile from Lily, quickly hidden as she concentrated on navigating the path down to the cabin. Each step sent pain shooting through her ankle, but she gritted her teeth against it. Pain was an old companion by now. The cabin was smaller than it had appeared from a distance, a single room with a lean-to addition that served as a stable for Isaac's horses. It was Spartan but clean, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall, a narrow bed in the corner, and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs. Herbs hung drying from the rafters, and a bookshelf held an unexpectedly large collection of volumes. Cooper, a large black and tan hound of indeterminate breeding, greeted them with a wagging tail and watchful eyes. The dog circled Lily once, sniffed her outstretched hand, then apparently decided she was acceptable and returned to his place by the fire. "Cooper approves," Isaac noted as he helped her to a chair. "He's a better judge of character than most people I know." Lily sank onto the wooden seat gratefully, her entire body aching with exhaustion. Now that she was sitting, the events of the past 24 hours crashed over her like a wave, leaving her shaking. Isaac moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, gathering supplies without crowding her. He placed a bowl of stew and a chunk of bread before her, then knelt to examine her ankle with impersonal professionalism. "It's not broken," he pronounced after gentle probing that still made her wince. "Bad sprain. You'll need to stay off it for a few days." "I don't have a few days," Lily protested, though the smell of the stew was making her stomach growl embarrassingly. "They'll be searching." "Eat first," Isaac advised, standing up. "Then we'll talk about what happens next." The simple kindness of a hot meal nearly undid her composure. Lily ate slowly, savoring each bite of the hearty venison stew while Isaac busied himself at the other end of the cabin, giving her space. She watched him covertly as he organized supplies, bandages, a bottle of whiskey for disinfecting, herbs she didn't recognize. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally, setting down her spoon. "You don't know me. I could be lying about everything." Isaac paused in his work, considering her question. "I've spent enough time around liars to recognize one," he said finally. And I've seen what the mining companies do to people who can't fight back." He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a ragged scar that ran from wrist to elbow. "Got this trying to help a young man escape from a camp near Leadville 2 years ago. Company guards caught up to us before we reached Denver." "What happened to him?" Lily asked softly. Isaac's eyes hardened. "They took him back. I never found out what happened after that, but I doubt it was anything good." He returned to the table with a basin of clean water and bandages. "I need to clean that cut on your temple and wrap your ankle. Is that all right?" Lily nodded, suddenly acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. Her dark blonde hair had mostly escaped from its pins, falling in tangled waves around her face. Her dress was torn and dirty, her hands scraped raw from climbing over rocks. "There's a creek about 50 yards behind the cabin," Isaac said, seeming to read her thoughts. "Tomorrow, when you're rested, you can bathe there. I have some spare clothes that will be too big but cleaner than what you've got." As he cleaned the graze on her temple with gentle hands, Lily studied him more closely. The initial fear she'd felt upon meeting him had subsided, replaced by cautious gratitude. There was something steady about Isaac Vance, a quiet confidence that came not from arrogance but from knowing exactly who he was and what he was capable of. "You were a soldier," she observed, noticing the way he dressed her wounds with practiced ease. "Union cavalry," he confirmed. "Joined up in '63 when I was 18. Spent most of my time scouting in Tennessee and Georgia. And after the war, came west. Tried mining, ranching, guiding, never could settle in one place for long." He wrapped her ankle with careful precision. "Until I found this valley 5 years ago. Something about it felt like home." Lily could understand that. The secluded valley, sheltered by towering pines and rimmed by rugged mountains, had a peaceful quality that seemed to exist outside the chaos of the world beyond. "It's beautiful here," she admitted. "I'd almost forgotten there were beautiful places left." Isaac tied off the bandage and sat back. "The mining companies haven't gotten this far yet. Too remote, not enough ore to make it worth their while." He stood and moved to the fireplace, adding another log. "You should rest." "You can take the bed, I'll sleep by the fire." "I can't take your bed," Lily protested. "You're not taking it, I'm offering it," he replied matter-of-factly. "And you need it more than I do right now." Too exhausted to argue, Lily allowed him to help her to the narrow bed. The straw mattress felt luxurious after months of sleeping on a hard floor in the mining camp barracks. As she sank into it, the scent of pine and clean linen enveloped her. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyelids already growing heavy. Isaac merely nodded, turning away to tend to the fire. "Sleep as long as you need. Cooper and I will keep watch." As Lily drifted towards sleep, she heard him moving quietly around the cabin, the rhythmic sound of a whetstone on a knife blade oddly comforting in its domesticity. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to fully relax, the tension draining from her body as exhaustion claimed her. The Silver Summit guards might still be searching, but for this moment in this isolated cabin with a strange, solemn man and his watchful dog, she was safe. Isaac sat by the fire long after Lily had fallen asleep, his hands mechanically working at sharpening his hunting knife while his mind turned over the situation. He wasn't a man who invited complications into his life. Yet here he was, harboring a fugitive from one of the most powerful mining operations in Colorado. Cooper rested his head on Isaac's boot, looking up with soulful eyes that seemed to question his master's decision. "Don't give me that look," Isaac muttered. "What was I supposed to do? Leave her out there for Burke's men to find?" The dog huffed softly, as if conceding the point. Isaac had crossed paths with Everett Burke once before, at a saloon in Silverton. The man was a brute who wore his position as camp supervisor like a crown. throwing his weight around and intimidating anyone who challenged him. The rumors about how he treated the women forced to work in the camp had made Isaac's blood boil, but without proof or authority, there had been little he could do. Now, looking at the sleeping woman across the room, her face finally peaceful in sleep despite the bruises and scratches, Isaac felt a resolve hardening within him. Whatever had happened at that camp, she'd had good reason to run, and he'd be damned if he'd let them drag her back. The practical part of his mind, the part that had kept him alive through war and wilderness, warned him that this could end badly. But there was another part, a part he'd thought long buried, that couldn't turn away from someone in need. Not again. Not after Tennessee. Isaac set down his knife and moved to the small window, peering out at the gathering dusk. The valley was quiet, no sign of riders or torches, but they would come eventually. Men like Burke didn't let their property, and that's how they viewed people like Lily, escape without consequence. He would need a plan, and soon. When Lily woke, golden afternoon light was streaming through the cabin's single window. For a moment, disorientation gripped her as she struggled to remember where she was. The softness beneath her, the clean scent of the blanket covering her, seemed so far removed from the mining camp that she wondered if she'd dreamed her escape. Then the throbbing in her ankle reminded her of the reality. She pushed herself up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. The cabin was empty, but a cup of water had been left beside the bed, along with what appeared to be folded clothing. A note scrawled in a firm hand lay atop them. Gone to check traps, back by sundown. Rest. IV. Lily sipped the water gratefully, then examined the clothes. He'd left a flannel shirt that would hang to her knees, and a pair of trousers with suspenders that she could cinch tight enough to stay up. Men's clothing, obviously, but clean and intact, unlike her tattered dress. The practicality of pants appealed to her immediately. She'd never worn them before, having been raised with strict notions of propriety, but after her time at the mining camp, such concerns seemed trivial. Survival trumped propriety every time. Changing was an awkward process with her injured ankle, but Lily managed it, rolling up the pant legs and sleeves to make the oversized garments somewhat manageable. The fabric smelled of pine smoke and the outdoors, reminding her that she was wearing a stranger's clothes, a man's clothes. Her cheeks flushed at the intimacy of it, but she pushed the thought away. There were far more important things to worry about than misplaced modesty. Using a walking stick she found propped against the wall, Lily made her way slowly to the cabin door and stepped outside into the late afternoon sunlight. The view took her breath away. The small clearing where the cabin sat was surrounded by towering pines, with snow-capped peaks visible in the distance. A stream chattered nearby, and wildflowers dotted the meadow grasses. Cooper, who had been dozing on the cabin's small porch, lifted his head at her appearance. His tail thumped against the wooden planks in greeting. "Hello there," Lily said softly, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. The dog leaned into her touch, his brown eyes regarding her with what seemed like approval. The simple pleasure of standing in fresh air, feeling the sun on her face without the constant surveillance of guards, brought tears to Lily's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, determined not to waste time on emotions when she needed to think practically. She needed a plan. The mining company wouldn't give up easily. As a woman who had escaped their camp and possibly killed a supervisor, she represented a dangerous precedent. If word got out that a woman had successfully fled, others might follow. Moreover, if Burke was dead or seriously injured, they'd want blood. Lily knew she couldn't stay with Isaac Vance for long. Her presence put him in danger, and despite his kindness, She had no reason to believe he would risk his life for her once he fully understood the consequences. Men had promised her safety before, only to betray her when it became inconvenient. Using the walking stick for support, she hobbled around the small clearing, testing her strength. The ankle hurt, but not as badly as the previous day. Perhaps in another day or two she could continue her journey north toward Wyoming territory or west to Utah. Somewhere the mining company's influence couldn't reach. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the approach of hoofbeats until Cooper's warning bark alerted her. Panic seized her as she whirled toward the sound, expecting to see company guards bearing down on her. Instead, Isaac emerged from the tree line on a dappled gray horse, leading a second mount laden with what appeared to be game. He pulled up short when he saw her standing in the clearing, his expression shifting from alert to something softer. "You're up," he observed, dismounting with fluid grace. "How's the ankle?" "Better," Lily replied, relaxing slightly. "Still sore, but I can walk on it." Isaac tied the horses to a hitching post and approached, his gaze taking in her appearance in his clothing. If he found it improper or amusing, he gave no indication. "Those will do until we can find something better," he said practically. "Brought back some rabbit for supper." As he moved past her toward the cabin, Lily caught the scent of the outdoors on him: pine sap, horse, and the clean sweat of honest work. It was so different from the acrid stench of the mining camp, where coal dust and unwashed bodies created a perpetual miasma that she found herself inhaling deeply. "I need to ask you something," she said as he began unloading his saddlebags. "How far is the nearest town that isn't Silverton?" "Somewhere the mining company doesn't have influence." Isaac paused, studying her. "You're thinking of moving on already." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "I'm grateful for your help, truly, but I can't stay here when they come looking." "If," he corrected. "When?" she insisted. "They will come, and I won't have your blood on my hands, too." Isaac's brows drew together. "Too?" Lily looked away, her hands tightening on the walking stick. "Burke, the camp supervisor, he cornered me in the storage shed. He'd been watching me for weeks, making comments. I knew what was coming." Her voice grew hollow. "He was drunk, angry because I'd been caught trying to send a letter out with one of the supply wagons. He said he was going to teach me my place." She forced herself to meet Isaac's gaze. "I hit him with a cast iron skillet, hard. I don't know if he's dead or just injured, but either way, they won't stop looking for me." Isaac's expression remained impassive, but something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "You defended yourself against a man who was trying to force himself on you," he said evenly. "That's not murder, that's survival." "The law might not see it that way," Lily pointed out, "especially when the Silver Summit Mining Company owns half the judges in the territory." "Maybe," Isaac conceded, "but you're not facing this alone now." The simple declaration stunned Lily into silence. Not alone. When was the last time she hadn't been alone in her struggles? Since her parents died, she'd been fighting for survival by herself, learning the hard way that most people would take advantage of a young woman without protection. "You barely know me," she said finally. "I know enough," Isaac replied, returning to his task of unloading the rabbits. "I know you're brave enough to escape that hell they call a mining camp, smart enough to survive in the mountains, and decent enough to worry about my safety when you're the one they're hunting." He glanced at her over his shoulder. "That tells me all I need to know about your character, Lily Remington." The way he said her name with respect, as if it mattered, made something warm unfurl in her chest. She tamped it down quickly. Attachment was dangerous. Hope was dangerous. "To answer your question," Isaac continued, "the nearest settlement free from Silver Summit's influence would be Cedar Creek, about 30 miles northwest. Small place, mostly trappers and a few homesteaders. No law to speak of, but no mining interests either. 30 miles over mountain terrain. On her injured ankle, that would take days, if she could make it at all. I have a better idea, Isaac said, seeming to read her thoughts. My friend Lucas runs a trading post about 15 miles from here. He makes regular trips to Denver with furs and supplies. He could take you with him on his next run, get you far beyond Silver Summit's reach. When does he leave? Lily asked, hope flickering despite her best efforts to suppress it. Not for another week or so, Isaac replied, and she couldn't help the way her face fell. A week was too long to stay in one place. I know what you're thinking, he added, but this valley is more secure than you might imagine. There are only 2 approaches that can be traveled by horseback, and I keep them both watched. Anyone coming in, I'll know about it long before they reach the cabin. How can you be so sure? Isaac's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. Because I spent 4 years learning how to track and avoid being tracked by some of the best scouts in the Confederacy. Trust me when I say I know these mountains better than any mining company thug. Something in his confident assertion made her want to believe him. And realistically, what choice did she have? With her ankle still healing and no supplies or knowledge of the terrain, striking out on her own would be suicidal. All right, she agreed finally. 1 week. Then I need to move on whether your friend is ready or not. Isaac nodded, apparently satisfied with the compromise. Fair enough. Now, how about you help me prepare these rabbits for supper? If you're going to be here a week, might as well make yourself useful. The matter-of-fact way he included her in the work, rather than treating her as an invalid or a burden, eased some of the tension Lily had been carrying. She followed him to a work table outside the cabin, where he laid out the cleaned rabbits and began showing her how he preferred to butcher them. Their hands worked side by side as the afternoon sun lengthened the shadows across the clearing. For the first time in months, Lily felt something like peace stealing over her, the simple rhythm of practical work, the companionable silence broken only by occasional instructions or questions. If this was to be her last week of freedom before she had to run again, at least she would have these moments to remember. That night, after a supper of rabbit stew that Lily had helped prepare, they sat by the fire while Isaac carefully redressed her ankle. His hands were calloused but gentle, and she found herself studying the top of his head as he bent to his task, noting the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "It's healing well," he pronounced, securing the fresh bandage. "Another couple of days and you should be able to walk normally, though I wouldn't recommend any mountain climbing just yet." "Thank you," Lily said, meaning it for more than just the medical attention. "For everything." Isaac glanced up, and for a moment, something passed between them, a current of understanding that went beyond words. Then he cleared his throat and moved away, returning to his chair across from her. "Tell me about yourself," he said, changing the subject. "What brought you to Colorado in the first place?" Lily's hands fidgeted with the hem of the oversized shirt she wore. "My parents died of consumption 2 years ago, back in Pennsylvania. Father was a school teacher, mother a seamstress. They left some debts, and the house had to be sold to cover them." She stared into the fire, remembering. "I tried to find work in Philadelphia, but there wasn't much available for a woman alone, nothing respectable anyway." Isaac nodded, understanding what she left unsaid. A young, unmarried woman without family protection had limited options, most of them unsavory. "Then I saw an advertisement," Lily continued. "The Silver Summit Mining Company was recruiting workers for their Colorado operations, men for the mines, women for cooking and laundry. They promised good wages, clean accommodations, and transportation west." She laughed bitterly. "It sounded like an adventure, a fresh start, By the time I realized it was a trap, it was too late. They charged you for the journey, Isaac guessed, and for your lodging and food once you arrived. Yes. Before I'd even worked a day, I was told I owed them $50 more than I could hope to earn in 6 months at the wages they actually paid, which were a fraction of what was promised. Every week, the debt grew larger instead of smaller. Debt peonage, Isaac said grimly. It's becoming common in the mining camps. The territorial government turns a blind eye because the companies bring in money and development. Some of the women had been there for years, Lily said softly. One died last winter of pneumonia. They buried her behind the camp without a marker and had someone else doing her work the next day. Isaac's jaw tightened, and he rose to add another log to the fire, his movements controlled but revealing his anger. There are men in Denver and Washington who claim to be civilizing the frontier, he said. But they've brought the worst kinds of exploitation with them, dressed up in the language of progress. You sound like you've seen it before. I have. After the war, I worked for a time with the Freedmen's Bureau, helping former slaves establish themselves. Saw the same patterns, sharecropping agreements that kept people tied to land they could never hope to own, company stores that charged extortionate prices, laws that criminalized vagrancy so men who tried to leave could be arrested and forced into chain gangs. He settled back into his chair, his expression distant. Came west thinking things would be different. In some ways they are, but human greed finds its opportunities everywhere. Is that why you live out here alone? Lily asked. Away from all that. Isaac considered her question for a long moment. Partly, he admitted. After the war, I found it hard to be around people. Too much noise, too many expectations. Out here, things are simpler. Not easier, but clearer. Nature doesn't lie or manipulate. A storm will kill you just as readily as a mountain lion, but at least they don't pretend to be your friend first. There was something in his voice, a old pain, carefully contained, that made Lily wonder what had happened to make him retreat from the world. But she recognized the boundaries in his tone and didn't press. What about you? Isaac asked. If you make it to Denver or beyond, what then? Lily realized she hadn't thought that far ahead. Survival had consumed all her planning. I don't know, she confessed. Fine work, I suppose. I can sew, cook, teach basic letters and figures. My father made sure I was educated, even if it wasn't fashionable for girls. You could go back east, Isaac suggested. Start over where no one knows you. I could, Lily agreed, though the thought held little appeal. But I think I'd like to stay in the West, just somewhere. Freer. I've seen enough of the territories to know there are opportunities here for someone willing to work hard. She smiled faintly. And I've proven I can survive more than most people thought possible. That you have, Isaac agreed, a note of admiration in his voice that made her cheeks warm. They lapsed into comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them. Cooper dozed at Isaac's feet, occasionally twitching in his sleep as he chased dream rabbits. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. We should both get some rest, Isaac said eventually. Tomorrow I need to ride the perimeter, check for any signs of company men in the area. You should stay close to the cabin, keep your weight off that ankle as much as possible. As they had the night before, Isaac insisted she take the bed while he made do with a bedroll near the fire. This time, though, Lily didn't argue as strenuously. The events of the past days had left her bone weary, and the comfort of the straw mattress was too tempting to refuse. As she drifted toward sleep, she found herself thinking about the enigmatic man sleeping across the room. In just 2 days, Isaac Vance had shown her more kindness than she'd encountered in the past 2 years combined. He'd asked for nothing in return, expected nothing. In a world that had taught her to be suspicious of every gesture, every offer of help, his straightforward decency was disorienting. And dangerous, a voice in her head warned. Don't get attached. Don't start believing in safety or kindness or anything beyond your own survival. But as sleep claimed her, another thought pushed through. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Over the next few days, a routine developed between them that felt surprisingly natural. Isaac would rise before dawn, tend to his horses and check his trap lines, while Lily recovered her strength and made herself useful around the cabin. She insisted on cooking their meals and had taken over mending some of Isaac's clothes that showed signs of his bachelor existence. Her ankle improved steadily under Isaac's care, and by the fourth day, she was able to walk without the stick, though she still favored it slightly. The bruises on her face had faded from angry purple to yellowing green, and the cut on her temple was healing cleanly. On the fifth morning, Isaac announced he needed to ride to a nearby ridge to check one of his early warning systems, a series of trips and signals he'd established to alert him to anyone approaching the valley. "I'll be back by midday," he told Lily as he saddled his horse. "Cooper will stay with you. If anything happens, anything at all that makes you uneasy, there's a place you can hide." He showed her a concealed trapdoor beneath the bearskin rug, a small root cellar dug into the earth beneath the cabin. "It's not comfortable, but it's well hidden. Use it if you need to." The fact that he'd prepared such contingencies reassured Lily. Isaac wasn't taking the threat of pursuit lightly, despite his confidence in their relative safety. After he rode off, Lily busied herself with domestic tasks, finding an unexpected satisfaction in bringing order to the bachelor's cabin. She had just finished sweeping the wooden floor when Cooper suddenly lifted his head from his paws, ears perked toward the door. Lily froze, her heart beginning to pound. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. The dog rose silently, moving to the window with hackles slightly raised. He made no sound, but his entire posture had changed from relaxed to alert. Moving as quietly as possible, Lily went to the window and peered out, careful to stay to one side where she wouldn't be easily visible from outside. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the clearing, the trees beyond, a jay scolding from a branch. Then a movement caught her eye, a flash of color through the trees that didn't belong to the natural palette of the forest. She held her breath, waiting, and was rewarded by the sight that confirmed her worst fears. A rider emerging from the tree line, then another. They wore no uniforms, but she recognized the distinctive hat of Everett Burke on the lead rider. He was alive. The knowledge hit her with a wave of conflicting emotions: relief that she wasn't a murderer, terror that he had found her, and a renewed surge of determination not to be taken back. Cooper growled low in his throat, and Lily placed a steadying hand on his head. "Quiet," she murmured. "We can't let them know we're here." She counted 5 riders total, all armed, moving cautiously around the perimeter of the clearing. They hadn't approached the cabin directly, which meant they weren't certain anyone was inside. Perhaps they were just scouting, checking all remote cabins in the area, but she couldn't take that chance, not with Burke leading them. With trembling hands, Lily gathered the few possessions she'd accumulated during her stay: a small knife Isaac had given her, a kerchief, some dried meat for the journey. Then she lifted the trapdoor and lowered herself into the root cellar, whistling softly for Cooper to join her. The dog hesitated, clearly torn between protecting the cabin and staying with her. Finally, his loyalty to his temporary charge won out, and he jumped down into the dark space beside her. Lily pulled the trapdoor closed above them just as the sound of boots on the porch reached her ears. In the dim light filtering through the cracks of the floorboards, Lily hugged Cooper close, her hand wrapped around the knife handle. The dog seemed to understand the need for absolute silence, pressing warm against her side as they listened to the men entering the cabin above. "Someone's been here recently," a gruff voice said. "Fire's still warm." "Could be the trapper who owns the place," another replied. "Doesn't mean the girl's here." "Search everything," Burke's voice ordered, and Lily's blood ran cold at the sound. "She's injured." She couldn't have gone far on her own. Footsteps moved across the floorboards above their heads, accompanied by the sounds of furniture being moved. Cupboards opened and closed. Lily held her breath as someone walked directly over the trapdoor, the wood creaking beneath their weight. "Not much here," one of the men reported. "Bed's been slept in, though, 2 cups by the wash basin." "She's been here," Burke said with certainty. "Question is, where is she now, and who's been helping her?" "There's women's work here," another observed. "Mending, cooking, but no woman's things." A crash made Lily jump as something was thrown or knocked over. Burke's temper had always been volatile, and it seemed his injury had done nothing to improve it. "We'll wait," he decided. "Whoever owns this place will be back, and when they return, we'll get answers." Lily closed her eyes in despair. They were setting a trap for Isaac. When he returned at midday, he would ride straight into an ambush, and it would be her fault. She had to warn him somehow. But how could she get out of the cellar and past 5 armed men without being seen? Cooper whined softly beside her, sensing her distress. She stroked his fur absently, her mind racing through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. Above, the men continued to search and talk, their voices sometimes too muffled to make out clearly. They mentioned the bounty the company had placed on her, $50 dead or alive, with another 50 if they recovered Burke's gold pocket watch she'd allegedly stolen. The lie didn't surprise her. Burke would never admit he tried to force himself on her. Time stretched endlessly in the dark confines of the cellar. Lily's legs began to cramp from staying in one position, but she dared not move for fear of making noise. Cooper remained extraordinarily still beside her, only the occasional twitch of his ears indicating his alertness. Then a new sound reached them, distant at first, then growing clearer. Hoofbeats. Isaac was returning. Panic seized Lily. She had to do something, anything, to warn him. But before she could move, Cooper suddenly tensed beside her, his attention shifting to the far corner of the cellar. Following his gaze, Lily noticed what she hadn't seen before: a narrow tunnel leading away from the main cellar space, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. Hope surged within her. If the tunnel led outside the cabin? Without hesitation, she began crawling toward it, Cooper following close behind. The tunnel was dirt-walled and smelled of earth and roots, clearly dug with purpose. Isaac had prepared more thoroughly than she'd realized. The passage twisted and turned, forcing Lily to navigate by feel in the near-total darkness. Her injured ankle protested the awkward movement, but she pushed through the pain, driven by the urgency of warning Isaac before it was too late. After what seemed an eternity, but was probably less than a minute, Lily felt a change in the air: fresher, cooler. The tunnel ended at a small opening concealed by a deadfall and thick brush, emerging behind a large boulder about 50 yards from the cabin. She peered through the foliage carefully. From this vantage point, she could see the clearing and the approaching rider, Isaac, moving at a steady trot, still unaware of the danger waiting inside his home. Lily's mind raced. She needed to create a diversion, something that would alert Isaac without revealing her position to Burke and his men. Direct signals were too risky. They'd be watching for anything unusual. Then Cooper provided the answer, growling softly as he caught the scent of strangers near his home. Lily grabbed his collar, an idea forming. "Cooper," she whispered urgently, "go to Isaac. "Go," the dog hesitated, looking between her and his approaching master. "Go," she repeated, giving him a gentle push. "Warn him." Whether it was the tone of her voice or some deeper understanding, Cooper suddenly darted from the concealment, racing toward Isaac in a way that was clearly alarmed rather than welcoming. Isaac immediately reined in his horse, his posture changing from relaxed to alert as he spotted his dog running toward him in obvious distress. Instead of continuing forward, he pulled his mount to the side, behind the cover of trees, watching the cabin with newfound wariness. Cooper reached him, circling and barking urgently, then looking back toward where Lily hid. Isaac dismounted, rifle in hand, and crouched to calm his dog, his eyes never leaving the cabin. Lily could see the exact moment he understood the slight stiffening of his shoulders, the way his hand moved to check his ammunition. He'd spotted something, perhaps a movement at one of the windows or the extra horses hidden poorly behind the cabin. Instead of approaching directly, Isaac began to move through the trees, circling to come at the cabin from an unexpected direction. Cooper stayed with him, no longer barking but moving with the silent intensity of a hunting dog. Lily remained hidden, her heart pounding so loudly she feared the men in the cabin might hear it even at this distance. She had done what she could. Now it was up to Isaac. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. The cabin appeared peaceful from the outside, giving no indication of the armed men waiting within. Isaac had disappeared from her view, moving through the trees with the stealth that had kept him alive during the war. Then, everything happened at once. A sharp whistle split the air. Isaac's signal to Cooper, followed immediately by the dog's explosive barking as he charged toward the back of the cabin. The door burst open, two men rushing out with guns drawn, responding to the commotion. The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the clearing. One of the men stumbled and fell, clutching his leg. The second spun, firing wildly toward the trees where the shot had originated. Isaac's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Drop your weapons. The next shot won't be a warning." Instead of complying, the wounded man raised his pistol, only to have it shot from his hand by Isaac's second, devastatingly accurate round. The man howled in pain, cradling his bloodied fingers. Inside the cabin, Lily could hear shouting and movement. Burke and the others would be preparing to rush out, to overwhelm Isaac with numbers. She needed to do something, to even the odds somehow. Without fully thinking through her actions, Lily broke from her hiding place, scuttling low to the ground toward the front of the cabin. If she could create a distraction from a different direction, make them think they were surrounded. She found a rock the size of her fist and hurled it through the cabin's window, then another, before ducking behind a water barrel. The shattering glass caused more confusion inside, voices raising in alarm. "We're surrounded," someone shouted. "There's more of them," Burke's voice cut through the chaos. "It's a trick. There's just the one man and the girl. Hold your positions." But his men were already panicking, their nerves frayed by the unexpected resistance. One fired through the broken window, the bullet splintering wood far from where Lily hid. Another dashed for the horses, clearly deciding that $50 wasn't worth dying for. Isaac took advantage of the chaos, moving swiftly from cover to cover until he had a clear line of sight to the cabin's front door. "Last chance," he called out. "Drop your weapons and come out with your hands visible." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the door slowly opened and two men emerged, hands raised. One was tall and thin, with a weathered face and nervous eyes. The other younger, barely more than a boy, looking terrified. "Where are the others?" Isaac demanded, keeping them covered with his rifle. "Just Burke left inside," the older man answered quickly. "This wasn't our idea, mister. Company ordered us to find the girl. We're just following orders." "On your knees," Isaac directed, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Hands behind your heads." As the men complied, Lily saw movement at the cabin door, Burke appearing with a gun pressed to the temple of the wounded man he was using as a shield. "Drop your rifle, trapper," Burke shouted, "or I put a bullet in Todd's brain." The wounded man, Todd, looked terrified, his face pale with pain and fear. Isaac didn't lower his weapon, but neither did he fire, the standoff stretching taut as a bowstring. "You're outnumbered, Burke," Isaac replied calmly. "Your men have surrendered. There's no way out of this valley for you except on my terms." Burke's face contorted with rage. "The girl is company property. She stole from us, attacked me. The law's on my side." "The law doesn't reach this far into the mountains," Isaac countered. "And we both know what really happened in that storage shed. Let Todd go, and maybe you walk out of here alive." Lily watched from her hiding place, her heart in her throat. Burke was unpredictable at the best of times. Cornered and humiliated, he was deadly dangerous. "I know you're out there, Lily," Burke called, his voice taking on a wheedling tone that made her skin crawl. "Come out now and nobody else gets hurt. It's me you wanted to punish, not these innocent men." It was a transparent attempt to play on her compassion, to draw her out where he could get to her. Lily remained silent, her hands clenched into fists. Burke's patience snapped. "Fine, have it your way." He shifted his aim from Todd's head to fire wildly in Isaac's direction. The shot went wide, but Isaac responded instantly. His rifle cracked and Burke staggered backward, a red stain blooming on his shoulder. He lost his grip on Todd, who immediately scrambled away on hands and knees. Burke recovered quickly, raising his pistol again, but Isaac was faster. The second shot caught Burke in the chest, the impact throwing him against the cabin wall. He slid down slowly, leaving a smear of blood on the rough logs, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You shot me," he gasped, as if the concept was incomprehensible. "You didn't leave much choice," Isaac replied grimly, approaching cautiously, his rifle still trained on the wounded man. Burke's gaze shifted beyond Isaac, focusing on someone behind him. Lily realized with a start that she had emerged from her hiding place without conscious decision, drawn forward by the cessation of gunfire. "There she is," Burke wheezed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "The little thief who killed me," they were his last words. His eyes glazed over, his head lolling to one side as the life left him. For a moment, the clearing was utterly silent except for the harsh breathing of the survivors. Lily stood frozen, staring at the body of the man who had tormented her for months, who had chased her into the wilderness, whose death she had wished for in her darkest moments. She felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, no guilt. Just a hollow emptiness where fear had lived for so long. Isaac secured the remaining men, binding their hands with leather straps. Only then did he turn to Lily, his eyes quickly assessing her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentler than it had been moments before. Lily shook her head, finding her voice with difficulty. "No, I hid in the root cellar. Then used the tunnel. I had to warn you." "You did well," Isaac said, and the simple approval in his voice broke something loose inside her. Tears came then, sudden and overwhelming. Lily pressed her hands to her mouth, trying to hold back the sobs that threatened to overtake her. Isaac hesitated only a moment before stepping forward to wrap an arm around her shoulders, providing steady support as the emotional storm broke over her. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "It's over now." But they both knew it wasn't, not really. Burke was dead, but the Silver Summit Mining Company remained. There would be questions, investigations, possibly more men sent to find her. The danger had receded but not disappeared. Still, for this moment, standing in the clearing with Isaac's arm around her and the immediate threat eliminated, Lily allowed herself to believe in the promise of those words. It's over now. The aftermath of the shooting unfolded with a grim efficiency that spoke of Isaac's experience with violence. The 3 surviving company men were secured in the lean-to stable, their wounds treated as best as possible under the circumstances. Burke's body was wrapped in canvas and laid behind the cabin until a decision could be made about what to do with it. By nightfall, a semblance of normalcy had returned to the cabin, though the broken window and bloodstains on the porch served as stark reminders of the day's events. Lily sat at the table, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold before her as Isaac cleaned his rifle with methodical care. "What happens now?" she asked finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Isaac set down his cleaning cloth, considering. "First light, I'll take the prisoners and Burke's body to Silverton. There's a territorial marshal there who's not in the mining company's pocket, not completely anyway. I'll tell him what happened." "They'll say I'm a thief and a murderer," Lily pointed out. "It will be their word against yours." "Maybe," Isaac acknowledged, "but Burke's reputation works against them. He's known for his temper and his treatment of women, and I have some influence with the marshal. We served together." Lily turned the cup between her hands, watching the dark liquid swirl. "And what about me?" "While you're in Silverton, my friend Lucas, the one I mentioned with the trading post, he'll be passing near here tomorrow on his way to check his trap lines. I'll leave a message for him at our usual spot. When he comes, he'll take you to his place, where you'll be safe until I return." "And if you don't return?" The question slipped out before Lily could stop it, revealing more of her concern than she'd intended. Isaac's eyes met hers, steady and certain. "I'll return. But if something goes wrong, Lucas knows to get you to Denver where you can make a fresh start." The practicality of his contingency planning should have been reassuring, but instead, it hollowed out something in Lily's chest. The idea of continuing on without Isaac, this man she'd known less than a week, but who had risked his life for her, felt suddenly, inexplicably wrong. "I don't want to put you in any more danger," she said softly. "You've done enough, more than enough. I could go with Lucas tomorrow, let you wash your hands of this whole mess." Isaac set his rifle aside and came to sit across from her at the table. In the lamplight, his face was all planes and shadows, his expression serious but gentle. "Is that what you want?" he asked. "To go with Lucas tomorrow?" Lily couldn't answer immediately. The truth was complicated, tangled with gratitude and fear, and something else that had been growing between them, something she'd been trying not to name or acknowledge. "I want you to be safe," she said finally. "I've brought nothing but trouble to your door." "That's not what I asked," Isaac pressed, his voice low. "What do you want, Lily? Not what you think is best for me or what you think you deserve. What do you want?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. For so long, her wants had been irrelevant, survival had been the only goal. Now, faced with a choice with agency, she found herself struggling to articulate her own desires. "I want." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I want not to be afraid anymore. I want to stop running. I want." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I want to stay here with you." The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and raw. Isaac didn't move for a long moment, and Lily began to regret her honesty, to prepare herself for gentle rejection. Then he reached across the table and took her hand in his calloused palm warm against her skin. "Then stay," he said simply. Lily looked up, searching his face for any sign of hesitation or obligation. "It's not that simple. The mining company won't just let this go. I'll be putting you at risk as long as I'm here." I've been at risk since the day I chose to live by my own code rather than bend to those with money and power, Isaac replied. That was my choice long before I met you, and it will remain my choice long after. He squeezed her hand gently. Besides, there are ways to make you disappear officially while still being here. Lucas knows people who can help with that. New papers, a new name if needed. The possibilities unfurled before her, a life here in this quiet valley, learning its rhythms and secrets, building something alongside this quiet, steadfast man. It seemed too much to hope for, too perfect to be real. What if? What if it doesn't work between us? She asked, giving voice to one of her many fears. You barely know me. A rare smile crossed Isaac's face, transforming his serious features. I know enough, he said, echoing his words from earlier. I know you're brave and resourceful. I know you care about others even when your own safety is at risk. You could have run when Burke and his men arrived, but instead you warned me. I know you've faced hardship without letting it break you. His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. The rest, we can learn together. If that's what you want. The tenderness in his touch, the steadiness in his gaze broke down the last of Lily's reservations. For the first time since her parents' deaths, someone was seeing her, really seeing her, not as a victim to be exploited or a burden to be endured, but as a woman of value, of worth. It is, she said, her voice stronger now. It is what I want. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, the mountain air scrubbed clean by a brief overnight shower. Isaac rose before first light to prepare for the journey to Silverton, loading Burke's body onto a pack horse and securing the prisoners for travel. They were subdued, having spent an uncomfortable night contemplating their circumstances. Lily helped as much as she could, packing food for Isaac's journey and preparing a simple breakfast. There was a new ease between them, a quiet understanding that didn't require many words. Occasionally their hands would brush as they worked side by side, and Lily would feel a warm current pass between them, a promise of something deeper to come. I should be back in 3 days, 4 at most, Isaac told her as he checked his saddle cinch one final time. Lucas will be here by midday. You remember the signals we discussed? Lily nodded. 3 short whistles followed by 2 long ones meant it was Lucas arriving. Any other approach should send her into hiding immediately. I'll be fine, she assured him, though her stomach tightened at the thought of him confronting the mining company's influence in Silverton. Just be careful. Isaac turned to her, his expression softening. In the early morning light, with his hat already settled on his head and his rifle secured in its saddle scabbard, he looked every inch the frontier scout capable, dangerous to his enemies, utterly reliable to those under his protection. I'm always careful, he replied with the hint of a smile. Then more seriously, Lily, if something happens, if I don't come back, the deed to this place is in the metal box under the floorboard by the fireplace. I've added your name to it. She stared at him, speechless. You, when did you do that? Last night after you fell asleep. It's not much of a legal document, but Lucas witnessed it. It should hold up. The implications overwhelmed her. He had given her a home, a sanctuary, regardless of what happened to him. It was a gesture of such profound trust and care that Lily found herself blinking back tears. Nothing's going to happen to you, she said firmly, stepping closer to him. You're coming back. Isaac looked down at her, his blue eyes intent. Yes, he agreed. I'm coming back. Then, with a gentle deliberation that made her heart race, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief but unmistakably meaningful, a promise, a beginning. When he pulled away, Lily felt breathless, as though something fundamental had shifted in her world. Isaac touched her cheek once, then mounted his horse. 3 days, he reminded her. Keep Cooper with you. He knows when something's not right. As if understanding he was being discussed, the dog pressed against Lily's side, looking up at his master alertly. "We'll be waiting," Lily said, her hand finding Cooper's fur for reassurance. With a final nod, Isaac turned his horse and led the somber procession, 3 bound prisoners on horseback, 1 dead man across a pack horse down the trail toward Silverton. Lily watched until they disappeared among the trees, then returned to the cabin with Cooper at her heels, already counting the hours until Isaac's return. Lucas arrived precisely when Isaac had predicted, announcing himself with the agreed-upon signal. He was older than Lily had expected, perhaps in his 60s, with a silver beard and bright, assessing eyes that missed nothing. His pack mule carried an impressive array of traps, furs, and supplies. "So you're the gal who's got our Isaac breaking his hermit habits," he said by way of greeting, his weathered face creasing in a smile. "Been trying to get him to socialize for years. Should have known it would take someone special." Lily felt her cheeks warm. "It's not. We're not." Lucas waved away her protestations. "Save it for someone who didn't see how he wrote your name on that deed, girl, like a man handling something precious." He dismounted with surprising agility for his age. "Now, Isaac said you make a decent cup of coffee. That true? Or was he exaggerating your virtues?" His teasing manner put Lily at ease, and soon they were seated at the cabin table, Cooper lying contentedly between them as they shared coffee and a simple meal of cornbread and jerky. "Isaac tells me you might need new papers," Lucas said, getting down to business. "A new identity to shake off the mining company's interest." Lily nodded. "He mentioned you know people who could help with that." "That I do. Got a daughter in Denver married to a fella who works in the Territorial Records office. They've helped a few folks disappear, so to speak, mostly women escaping bad situations." He studied her over the rim of his cup. "It costs, though, not cheap to create a whole new person." "I don't have money," Lily admitted. "Not yet anyway, but I can work, pay it off over time." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "Isaac said you might say that, also said to tell you not to worry about the cost." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather pouch, setting it on the table with a solid thunk. "He sent this along." Lily opened the pouch to find several gold coins, enough to pay for new papers and much more besides. "I can't accept this," she said, pushing it back toward Lucas. "It's too much." "It's not charity if that's what you're thinking," Lucas replied, refusing to take the pouch. "Isaac said to consider it an advance on your partnership." "Partnership?" His words, not mine. "Said you've got a good eye for detail and steady hands. Thought you might want to learn the trapping business, maybe take over some of the account keeping he's always hated." Lucas grinned. "Between you and me, the man can track anything that walks on 4 legs, but numbers make his head ache something fierce." The idea that Isaac had been thinking of a future for them, a practical, working partnership that could evolve into something more, filled Lily with a quiet joy. It wasn't a romantic declaration, but in many ways it was better. A recognition of her capabilities, her potential contribution, her value beyond what most men would see. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like that very much." The 3 days of Isaac's absence passed with agonizing slowness. Lucas stayed the first night, teaching Lily some basics of the trapping business and telling her stories about Isaac that filled in some of the gaps in her knowledge of the quiet man who had saved her. She learned that Isaac had come west immediately after the war, that he'd worked briefly as a lawman in Kansas, before the politics and corruption drove him to seek solitude in the mountains. She discovered that despite his preference for isolation, he was known and respected in settlements across 3 territories for his fairness and skill. Most surprisingly, She learned that Isaac had once been engaged, years ago, to a woman in Denver, the daughter of a prominent businessman. The engagement had ended badly when Isaac discovered she was more interested in reforming him into a proper city gentleman than in accepting him as he was. Broke his heart, in a way, Lucas confided. Not because he loved her so deeply, but because he realized he'd been trying to be someone he wasn't for her sake. After that, he stopped trying to fit into what other folks thought he should be. Came out here, built this place, found his own way. The knowledge gave Lily a deeper understanding of why Isaac had been so careful to let her make her own choices, to never pressure or persuade. He knew the cost of trying to mold oneself to another's expectations. After Lucas left on the second day, promising to return in a week with news about the papers, Lily settled into a rhythm of caring for the cabin and watching for Isaac's return. Cooper proved to be excellent company, alert to any unusual sounds, affectionate without being demanding, and seemingly attuned to her moods. On the morning of the fourth day, with no sign of Isaac yet, Lily began to worry in earnest. She had just decided to start baking bread, something to keep her hands busy and her mind occupied, when Cooper suddenly lifted his head from his paws. Ears perked toward the door. Lily froze, flour-covered hands hovering over the mixing bowl. "What is it, boy?" The dog rose and trotted to the door, his tail beginning to wag, not the alert posture he took when strangers approached, but the happy anticipation of greeting someone familiar. Lily's heart leapt. She hurried to the window, straining to see down the trail. At first, there was nothing. Then a movement caught her eye, a single rider emerging from the trees. Isaac. She was out the door before conscious thought, Cooper bounding ahead of her as Isaac guided his tired horse into the clearing. He looked exhausted, with several days' worth of stubble darkening his jaw and shadows beneath his eyes, but he was whole and unharmed. He dismounted stiffly, patting Cooper's head as the dog danced around him. Then he looked up and saw Lily standing there, her dress dusted with flour, her face alight with relief and something more. "You're back," she said, the simple statement containing volumes. "I said I would be," Isaac replied, his voice rough with fatigue but warm. There was a moment of hesitation, a space where both wondered how to navigate this new territory between them. And then Lily stepped forward, and Isaac opened his arms, and she was enfolded in an embrace that felt like coming home. He smelled of trail dust and pine and horses, his body solid and real against hers. Lily pressed her face into his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek, reassuring herself that he was truly here, truly safe. "I was starting to worry," she admitted, her voice muffled against his shirt. Isaac's arms tightened around her. "Took longer than I expected. The marshal wanted statements from all the men, and the mining company representatives arrived, demanding explanations." Lily pulled back slightly to look up at him, concern creasing her brow. "What happened? Are you in trouble?" "No," Isaac assured her, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. "Burke's reputation worked against them. 2 of the men admitted he'd been obsessed with finding you, that he'd exceeded his authority. And when the marshal searched Burke's belongings, he found your father's watch, the one you supposedly stole, along with several other items taken from women at the camp." Relief washed through Lily. "So they believe me. About what happened, the marshal does. The mining company is still claiming you violated your work contract by leaving, but without Burke to push the issue, they're less interested in pursuing it. Especially since the marshal is now investigating conditions at the camp, based on what the men told him." It was more than Lily had dared hope for. Not complete freedom from worry, perhaps, but a significant easing of the immediate danger. And the men who came with Burke. 2 are being held on charges of assault and trespassing. The youngest one, the boy, really the marshal released to his family in Silverton. He was just following orders, had no real part in any of it. Isaac rubbed a hand over his face wearily. It's not perfect justice, but it's something. Lily reached up to touch his cheek, noting the lines of exhaustion etched there. You need rest, and food, and probably a bath, she added with a small smile. Isaac caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, a gesture so unexpectedly tender that it stole Lily's breath. In that order. Bath first, she decided firmly. I'll heat water while you take care of your horse. They moved around each other with the ease of much longer acquaintance, Lily building up the fire and heating water while Isaac tended to his mount and unpacked his saddlebags. By the time he'd finished, a steaming bath awaited him behind a privacy screen Lily had improvised from a blanket. She busied herself with preparing a proper meal while he bathed, trying not to think too much about the man on the other side of the blanket. Their relationship was still new, still finding its boundaries. There would be time for more intimate discoveries later, when they'd had a chance to talk properly. When Isaac emerged, clean-shaven and dressed in fresh clothes, some of the weariness had left his face. He ate the venison stew and biscuits Lily had prepared with appreciative hunger, and she found herself watching the simple pleasure he took in the meal and being home. Home. The word resonated within her. This cabin, this valley, this man, they had become home to her with a speed that should have been frightening but instead felt inevitable. Lucas came, she said as Isaac finished eating. He told me about the papers, the new identity, and about the partnership you proposed. Isaac met her gaze steadily. Are you interested? In the partnership, I mean. Yes, Lily replied without hesitation. Very much so, although I'll need to learn a great deal about trapping and trading. I'm a patient teacher, Isaac said, a smile touching his eyes. And you're a quick study, from what I've seen. There was something else she needed to address, something Lucas had revealed that still troubled her. He also told me about your fiancée in Denver, about how she wanted to change you. Isaac's expression clouded slightly. Lucas talks too much, he muttered, then sighed. It was a long time ago. I was different then, trying to outrun the memories of the war, trying to be what everyone said a man should be after such things settled, respectable, part of society again. What happened? Lily asked gently. Isaac was quiet for a moment, collecting his thoughts. Margaret was beautiful, educated, from a good family, as they say. Her father owned several businesses in Denver. I met her while working as security for a bank he had interests in. She saw me as a project, I think. The rough war veteran she could civilize. His fingers traced patterns on the wooden tabletop. For a while, I tried to be what she wanted, wore the right clothes, said the right things, attended the right functions. But it was like wearing someone else's skin. I couldn't breathe. Lily nodded, understanding all too well the suffocation of trying to conform to others' expectations. The engagement ended when her father offered me a position managing one of his businesses. Isaac continued. It would have meant a desk, 4 walls, a life spent tallying accounts and attending society dinners. I realized I couldn't do it, not even for her. When I told her, she said I was throwing away my chance at being a real gentleman. A wry smile touched his lips. She was right, in a way. I was choosing to be myself instead. And you've never regretted it? Lily asked. Isaac looked at her directly, his blue eyes clear and certain. Not once, especially not now. The simple declaration warmed Lily to her core. I don't want to change you, Isaac, she said softly. You saved my life by being exactly who you are. And you, he replied, reaching across the table to take her hand, don't need to be anything other than who you are. The woman who escaped a mining camp, survived in the mountains, and stood her ground against armed men. The woman who bakes bread and mends shirts and looks at this rough cabin and sees a home. Lily's throat tightened with emotion. Is that who I am? That and so much more, Isaac said, his voice dropping lower. Things we'll discover together if you'll stay. I'll stay, Lily whispered, the words a vow, a promise, a beginning. Isaac stood and drew her up with him, his hands gentle but sure on her waist. This time when they kissed, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, only the sweet certainty of two people who had found in each other something worth risking everything for. Outside, the mountains stood sentinel around their valley, unchanged by the small human dramas that unfolded beneath their towering peaks. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of coming rain. And in a cabin built by one man's hands but made into a home by two hearts' choice, a new life was taking root, one free from fear, rich with possibility, and protected by a love as enduring as the mountains themselves. 5 years later, Lily stood at the edge of the garden she had painstakingly coaxed from the mountain soil, a basket of fresh vegetables on her arm as she surveyed the homestead that had flourished under her and Isaac's joint care. The original one-room cabin had expanded to include a proper bedroom, a larger kitchen, and a small workshop where she prepared the herbal remedies that had become sought after by settlers throughout the region. Mama, Mama, look. 4-year-old Samuel came racing around the corner of the cabin, his dark hair flying, blue eyes so like his father's wide with excitement. In his cupped hands, he carried a toad nearly the size of his palm. Cooper helped me find him. The aging dog trotted behind the boy, his muzzle now gray but his eyes still bright with intelligence. He gave Lily a look that seemed to say, "I'm just making sure the boy doesn't get into trouble," before settling on the porch with a contented sigh. "That's a magnificent toad, Sam," Lily acknowledged seriously, setting down her basket to examine the creature. "Remember, we look with our eyes and gentle hands, then let wild things go back to their homes." Samuel nodded solemnly. At 4, he was already showing the quiet thoughtfulness of his father combined with a curiosity about the natural world that kept Lily constantly answering questions. "Can I show Papa first?" he asked. "Of course. He and Uncle Lucas should be back from town any minute." As if summoned by her words, the sound of approaching horses reached them. Samuel carefully transferred his amphibian friend to one hand so he could wave excitedly with the other. Isaac rode into the clearing, his tall figure as commanding as ever, though the years of peace and purpose had softened some of the hard edges she'd first encountered. Beside him, Lucas, now well into his 70s, but still spry, led a packhorse laden with supplies from Silverton. "Papa." "Uncle Lucas," Samuel called, running to meet them with his precious cargo. "Look what Cooper helped me find." Isaac dismounted in one fluid motion and crouched to his son's level, giving the toad appropriate appreciation before tousling the boy's hair affectionately. "That's quite a specimen, Sam. Almost as big as the one your mama caught when she was trying to impress me the first summer she lived here." Lily laughed, coming forward to greet them. "It was not to impress you. It was for a poultice, and you know it." Isaac's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled at her. "If you say so, Mrs. Vance." 5 years of marriage had done nothing to diminish the thrill Lily felt at that name, her legal name now, thanks to the papers Lucas's connections had secured, and a small wedding performed by a traveling preacher the following spring. Lily Remington had officially died in a hunting accident in the mountains. Lily Vance had emerged in her place, with a history constructed to withstand scrutiny and a future built on truth. "How was town?" she asked as Isaac drew her into a brief embrace, his lips brushing her forehead in the casual affection that still made her heart flutter. "Busy," he replied. The new railroad spur is bringing more people through Silverton than ever, but we got everything on your list, plus the mail." He reached into his saddlebag and produced several letters, including one from your friend Emma in Denver. Lily took the letter eagerly. Emma had been one of the women at the mining camp, rescued during the investigation that followed Burke's death. She now worked as a schoolteacher in Denver and wrote regularly with news from the city. "And," Isaac added, pulling out a small package wrapped in brown paper, "the books you ordered for Sam's lessons." Samuel, who had just released his toad back into the garden with appropriate ceremony, perked up at the mention of books. Despite his young age, he was already reading simple texts, his quick mind absorbing knowledge like a sponge. "New books," he exclaimed, rushing back to see. "Are there pictures, Mama?" "Let's find out after supper," Lily promised, tucking the package under her arm. "Right now, you can help Uncle Lucas feed the horses while Papa and I prepare the meal." The domesticity of the scene, a family going about their evening routine, secure in their love for each other, and their place in the world sometimes still struck Lily as miraculous. After the deprivations of the mining camp and the terror of her escape, this life they had built together seemed like a dream she might wake from. But it was real as the solid presence of Isaac beside her, as real as their son's laughter, as real as the community they had gradually built around themselves, despite their relative isolation. Over the years, their homestead had become known as a place of refuge and healing. Isaac still guided hunting parties and broke horses, while Lily's herbal knowledge and gentle hands had earned her a reputation as a healer. People came from miles around for her remedies and occasionally for safe harbor women escaping abusive situations, men fleeing debt bondage or unjust accusations. They never turned anyone away who genuinely needed help. It was a principle they both lived by, a legacy they were teaching Samuel to continue. Later that evening, after Samuel had been tucked into bed with one of his new books placed on the table for morning, and Lucas had retired to the small cabin they had built for him nearby, Lily and Isaac sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I had a letter from Marshal Collins while in town," Isaac said, his arm draped comfortably around Lily's shoulders. "Silver Summit Mining Company is finally being investigated by the territorial government. Seems our friend Burke wasn't the only supervisor using coercive methods." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder, absorbing the news. After 5 years, what changed? New governor, for one thing, and enough complaints accumulated that they couldn't be ignored anymore. "Collins says several of the women who were at the camp with you have come forward with testimony." Isaac's fingers traced gentle patterns on her arm. "He wanted to know if you'd be willing to provide a written statement about your experiences there, under your former name, of course." Lily was quiet for a moment, considering. The years had healed many of her wounds, but the memories of that time would never completely fade. The opportunity to help ensure no other women suffered as she had was compelling. "Yes," she decided. "I'll write it all down. Every detail I can remember." Isaac pressed a kiss to her temple. "I thought you might say that. Collins said to tell you there's no risk to you now. Your death is well established in the records." "It's not about risk," Lily replied. "It's about setting things right, making sure what happened there can't be hidden away and forgotten." "I know," Isaac said softly. "It's one of the many reasons I love you." Even after 5 years of marriage, such direct declarations from her typically reserved husband still had the power to make Lily's heart skip. She turned in his embrace to look up at him, at the face that had become as necessary to her as air. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking in a half-dead fugitive who brought danger to your door and completely disrupted your peaceful life?" Isaac's laugh rumbled through his chest. My peaceful life was missing something vital before you stumbled into it, Lily Vance. I just didn't know what until I found you. He cupped her cheek in his palm, his expression growing serious. The day you decided to stay was the day my life truly began. Everything before was just waiting. Lily leaned into his touch, overwhelmed as always by the depth of feeling between them. What had started as rescue and gratitude had deepened into a partnership of equals, a love built on mutual respect and unwavering support. "We've created something beautiful here," she whispered, looking out at their homestead, the expanded cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, the garden bursting with life, the paddock where horses grazed peacefully under the rising moon. "Yes," Isaac agreed, following her gaze. "Though I think our finest creation is currently dreaming about toads and adventure in his bed." Lily smiled, thinking of their son, their miracle, born in the depths of a mountain winter with only Isaac and old Lucas to help bring him into the world. "He has your eyes, your quiet way of watching everything, but I think he has my curiosity." "God help us all," Isaac murmured with mock horror, though pride shone in his eyes whenever he spoke of Samuel. "Lucas says he's going to be smarter than both of us combined." "Lucas is probably right," Lily laughed. "He usually is." They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that comes only with complete trust and acceptance. Around them, the night sounds of the mountains created a familiar symphony, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of wind through pines, the soft nickering of horses settling for the night. "I was thinking," Isaac said after a while, his voice thoughtful, "about building another addition to the cabin. A second bedroom." Lily turned to look at him, a question in her eyes that was answered by the gentle, knowing smile on his face. "You noticed?" she asked softly, one hand drifting to her still flat stomach. "I notice everything about you," he replied, covering her hand with his own. "The way you've been tired in the mornings, how you couldn't stomach coffee last week, the same signs as before Samuel." Joy bubbled up within her, joy and gratitude for this man who saw her so completely, who knew her body's rhythms as intimately as his own. "I wasn't certain yet," she admitted. "It's early still." "Are you happy about it?" Isaac asked, a hint of vulnerability in the question. In answer, Lily leaned up to kiss him, pouring all her love and certainty into the gesture. "Deliriously," she whispered against his lips. "Another child to love, another piece of you and me together. How could I be anything but happy?" Isaac gathered her closer, his strong arms enfolding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. And to him, she was, just as he was to her. From the most desperate moment of her life, fleeing into the mountains with nothing but terror and determination driving her forward, Lily had found her way to this. A love as vast and enduring as the mountains themselves. A family built on choice rather than circumstance. A future limited only by the horizons they chose to set. "I love you, Isaac Vance," she murmured into the quiet night, "with everything I am." "And I love you," he replied, his voice deep with emotion. "Always have, since you stood in my clearing with a rock in your hand ready to fight the world." Lily laughed softly at the memory. "I was terrified." "You were magnificent," Isaac corrected. "You still are." Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, bearing witness to the small miracle of two lives intertwined against all odds. And in the shelter of the valley they had made their own, Lily and Isaac Vance held their past close, embraced their present joy, and looked toward a future as bright and promising as the dawn that would inevitably follow this perfect, peaceful night.